In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, it's easy to get caught up in the constant hum of notifications and messages. Our phones are our lifelines, our connections to the outside world, and when we don't hear from someone we care about, the absence can feel overwhelming. We wait, hoping for a message, a call, some kind of sign that we are not alone. But when the silence stretches on, something shifts within us. The mind races, emotions swell, and we begin to wonder, has something changed? Are we being rejected? Is it a sign that we've been forgotten?
This feeling can leave us feeling unsettled, questioning the value of our relationships, and even the meaning of our self-worth. We interpret silence as rejection, indifference, or worse, betrayal. But what if we have misunderstood the true nature of silence? What if silence isn't empty? What if, in fact, it holds something much deeper, something more profound than words could ever express? Buddhism, especially Zen philosophy, teaches us that silence is not absence but a form of presence. It is not an empty space to be feared or avoided, but a space filled with potential, growth, and understanding. It is a pause in the chaos, a time for reflection, and an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves. Silence can be a powerful teacher, helping us understand the impermanence of life, the art of detachment, and the importance of self-worth beyond external validation. We live in a world where the noise of our phones, social media, and constant communication can distract us from our true selves. The silence that we often dread is actually a chance to disconnect from these distractions and reconnect with our inner peace. But how do we embrace that silence? How can we use it to transform our understanding of relationships, our expectations of others, and, ultimately, our perception of ourselves? In this video, we will explore the power of silence through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. We will uncover the meaning behind long absences, using profound teachings and stories from the Buddha and Zen masters to guide us. By the end of this journey, you will see silence not as an absence, but as a presence full of potential. You'll learn to view silence not as a void but as a rich space for growth, understanding, and inner peace. Silence, in its most potent form, can become a teacher that reveals hidden truths. When someone who once played an active part in our lives, whether as a friend, mentor, or loved one, suddenly withdraws, we are often left in a state of confusion. The absence of their presence or communication leads us to wonder what happened. We might think, did I say something wrong, or have they grown tired of me? The silence, which initially feels like a void, soon becomes a storm of restless thoughts and emotions. But it is important to ask, is this silence truly empty? Or is there something in it that we fail to perceive because we are too consumed by our own internal noise? Buddhism offers us a profound perspective on silence. In our modern world, filled with constant stimuli, we seldom allow ourselves to be present in the stillness. We avoid silence as if it holds nothing but emptiness. But as the Buddha himself demonstrated, silence holds the potential for deep wisdom. It's not a void to be filled, rather, it's a space to be inhabited. Through silence, we are called to reflect, to allow the noise of our thoughts to settle, and to observe what remains. Consider the story of a young monk who, after many years of learning under the guidance of a revered master, began to feel a deep sense of loss as his teacher withdrew into silence. The teacher, once a constant presence in the monk's life, became more distant. The monk started to question the nature of his teacher's absence. Was this silence a sign of rejection? Had the teacher abandoned him, or was the teacher simply allowing the monk to stand on his own? The monk, unsure of the cause of the silence, grew uneasy. He could not sit still with the lack of communication. His mind swirled with questions, anxieties, and self-doubt. But this experience is not unique. Many of us have felt the sting of silence in relationships, when someone we care about becomes distant. We might fill that silence with a sense of abandonment or fear of rejection. However, the deeper lesson, as the monk learned, is that silence is an opportunity to release attachment, not a sign of neglect. On his journey to understand the true nature of silence, the monk met a hermit known for his wisdom and profound stillness. When the monk asked about the meaning of silence in relationships, the hermit did not respond with words. Instead, he began to pour a cup of tea, placing it gently on the table. The monk, eager for an answer, reached for the cup. Only then did the hermit speak, "If you want the tea, take it. If you do not, leave it. The tea does not chase you." This simple act of pouring tea holds deep meaning. The tea, much like people, is available, but it does not seek out the monk. It simply exists. In that moment, the monk understood that people like tea are where they choose to be. Sometimes, they engage with us, sometimes, they do not. This is not about our worth, but about understanding that everyone follows their own path. The key lesson here is that attachment to others' presence can cause suffering. We must learn to let go of the expectation that others must always be present in the ways we want. Just as the tea does not chase the monk, we must learn not to chase after people, allowing them the freedom to choose their path. The merchant and the scale offer another valuable lesson in understanding silence and absence. As the monk continued his journey, he encountered a merchant who was known for his fair dealings and his deep understanding of the natural flow of life. The merchant showed the monk a scale, placing a large stone on one side and small pebbles on the other. Balance changes over time, the merchant explained. What once held great weight may lose its significance as priorities shift. In life, priorities evolve. Relationships are no different. What was once at the center of our lives may, over time, move to the periphery. People grow, change, and sometimes, their paths take them in a different direction. This is not a reflection of our value, but simply an acknowledgement of life's impermanence. The monk learned that the stone had to move, it could not remain forever in the same place. Just as priorities shift, so too do the people in our lives. Understanding this impermanence frees us from the pain of attachment. The merchant's lesson was simple: not everyone who once shared our journey will continue with us. Finally, the monk met an old monk at a temple who had spent years meditating on the stillness of life. The monk, burdened by his unanswered questions, asked, "How should I respond to the silence of my teacher and those who seem to forget me?" The old monk, pointing to an empty bench, said, "Sit." The young monk sat down, observing the stillness around him. Hours passed. The wind blew. The leaves rustled. Finally, the old monk spoke. "Did you see how the bench remains still, no matter who comes or goes? It does not ask for attention. It simply is." The lesson here was profound. The bench remains unmoved by the arrival or departure of those who sit upon it. It does not react. It is simply present. The old monk's advice was clear: be like the bench. Stay still. Do not chase after people or their attention. Let them come and go as they will, and remain undisturbed in your own peace. This story aligns with the Buddhist principle of non-attachment and equanimity. In life, relationships come and go. People enter and exit our lives, sometimes without warning. Rather than filling the space of their absence with frustration or longing, we must learn to embrace stillness. Peace comes not from clinging to others, but from remaining centered within ourselves. The monk learned that by accepting the absence of his teacher, he could find peace within his own heart. Silence, he discovered, was not a source of abandonment, but a space for personal growth and self-reflection. Silence, then, is a powerful tool for self-awareness. It is not punishment or neglect. Silence provides the space for reflection, growth, and the release of attachment. In silence, we find the opportunity to let go of our need for constant validation and presence from others. Instead of reacting to silence with anxiety, we can use it as an opportunity to deepen our understanding of ourselves and our relationships. Through the lessons learned from the hermit, merchant, and old monk, the monk came to understand that silence is not an enemy to be feared, but a guide that leads us toward greater peace. It teaches us that our worth is not defined by others' attention, but by our ability to remain still, to observe, and to let go. Just as the bench does not move when someone sits or leaves, we too must learn to remain undisturbed by the arrival or absence of others, finding peace within ourselves, regardless of the external circumstances. In Buddhism, silence is a teacher that helps us cultivate mindfulness, equanimity, and a deeper understanding of impermanence. It offers us the opportunity to grow, not by clinging to relationships or outcomes, but by accepting life as it unfolds. When we embrace silence, we discover that it is not a void, but a space filled with endless potential for growth, clarity, and inner peace. The silence we experience in relationships often feels like a void, an emptiness that unsettles us. When someone we care about withdraws, whether by not reaching out, stopping their calls, or letting the lines of communication go silent, it's easy to interpret this silence as a form of abandonment. Our minds, unable to tolerate the stillness, fill the space with negative emotions. Doubt creeps in. Have I done something wrong? Have they forgotten me? Why am I not enough anymore? These thoughts flood our consciousness, and we find ourselves overwhelmed by them. But in these moments, silence is misunderstood. It is not emptiness, it is the opposite. It is full of lessons we can learn if we allow ourselves to truly listen. Buddhism teaches us that silence is not just an absence, but an invitation to explore. When we are left with silence, we often turn to our own inner chaos to fill the void, rather than sitting quietly to let the silence reveal its wisdom. Like a calm lake reflecting the sky, silence has the capacity to reflect the deeper truths about our lives. Silence is a space for growth, not something to be feared. And yet, in our fast-paced world, we often fail to see this. Let's consider the famous story of the Buddha and his silence in the face of questions. When a group of people once asked the Buddha profound philosophical questions, he remained silent. Instead of answering directly, he let the silence hang in the air. The crowd, impatient and bewildered, expected an intellectual response, but the Buddhist silence conveyed a powerful message. The answers to life's greatest questions are not always found in words. Sometimes, the answers lie in the space between thoughts, in the quiet that allows our true understanding to arise. In our relationships, we often expect answers and closure, yet silence teaches us that the absence of a response may not signify rejection, but an opportunity to reflect. Silence, like a mirror, reflects back our inner state. If we are unsettled by silence, it may be that we are too attached to external validation. Buddhist philosophy teaches us that attachment is the root of suffering. When we are attached to the idea that others must respond or be present in our lives in a specific way, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Silence offers us the chance to let go of these attachments and find peace within. Take the story of the Buddha's disciple, Ananda, who was once troubled by his master's absence. Ananda had been a close companion of the Buddha and had shared many of his teachings, but when the Buddha's final moments approached, Ananda was filled with sadness and confusion. He questioned the purpose of the Buddha's teachings, feeling abandoned by the silence that loomed. But in that silence, Ananda was meant to learn something crucial. The Buddha had taught him everything he needed to know. There was no further answer, no more guidance necessary. In that moment, Ananda had to learn to sit with the silence and understand that peace does not come from external answers, but from internal acceptance. Similarly, in our own lives, when someone we care about becomes silent, it may not be an indication that they no longer value us. Rather, it could be that their path has diverged, or they are in a phase of their own journey that requires solitude. In these moments, silence offers us the chance to practice acceptance. It reminds us that we cannot control others, nor can we demand that they be present for us in ways that meet our expectations. We must learn to embrace silence, to sit with it, and to find peace in the stillness, trusting that the path of life unfolds as it should. Another powerful story comes from the Zen tradition, where a teacher once asked a student, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The question, seemingly absurd, invites contemplation on the nature of perception. Silence is not simply the absence of sound, but an opportunity to move beyond dualistic thinking. When we stop clinging to our preconceived notions of how things should be, silence teaches us to let go of our need for certainty and embrace the mystery of life. Zen masters often emphasize that the mind, like a monkey jumping from branch to branch, is restless and agitated. In these moments of silence, our thoughts leap around, filled with anxiety and doubt. But through the practice of meditation, we can learn to still the mind and experience silence as it truly is, not a void, but a space for clarity. Silence allows us to transcend the constant chatter of the mind and tap into a deeper sense of peace. The silence we experience in relationships often feels like a void, an emptiness that unsettles us. When someone we care about withdraws, whether by not reaching out, stopping their calls, or letting the lines of communication go silent, it's easy to interpret this silence as a form of abandonment. Our minds, unable to tolerate the stillness, fill the space. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness teaches us to be present with whatever arises, including the silence. Rather than filling the space with worries or judgments, we simply observe it, allowing it to unfold naturally. This is the essence of mindfulness, to be fully present in the moment, whether that moment is filled with noise or silence. Silence becomes a teacher, showing us that we do not need to fill every space with sound, with words, or with action. Sometimes, the most profound insights come from the moments when we let go of our need to control or fix things. In our relationships, silence can be a sign of change, a signal that something is shifting in a dynamic. We may experience periods where communication slows or stops, but rather than interpreting this as rejection, we can view it as an opportunity to reflect on our own growth. Relationships, like all things in life, are subject to the law of impermanence. People come and go. We may outgrow certain connections or find that others drift away. But in the silence that follows, we are invited to examine our attachment to those relationships and whether we are relying too much on them for our sense of self-worth. This lesson is evident in the story of a well-known Zen master, Hakuin, who faced a difficult moment when a young woman accused him of being the father of her child. The community, shocked by the accusation, was ready to cast Hakuin out, but he said nothing in his defense. When the child was born and the woman later admitted that Hakuin was not the father, the people in the village expected him to react with anger or frustration. But Hakuin remained silent. He did not argue, did not defend himself. His silence was a profound lesson in accepting life's challenges without attachment to our reputations, our egos, or our desire to be seen in a certain light. Through this silence, Hakuin showed that true peace comes from within, not from external validation or the opinions of others. Silence in Buddhism teaches us that life does not always need to be explained or understood. Sometimes, it is enough to simply sit with what is. Whether it is the absence of a friend, the loss of a loved one, or a period of isolation, silence gives us the space to turn inward, to find peace in ourselves rather than searching for answers outside. When we sit in silence, we learn to listen not just to the world around us, but to the world within. And in that listening, we discover that silence is not an enemy, but a guide to the deeper truths of our existence. In embracing silence, we come to understand that it is not a void to be feared or avoided, but a space for reflection, healing, and growth. Silence teaches us that our worth is not dependent on the presence or attention of others, but on our own inner stillness. Just as the Buddha sat in silence for many years, letting go of the need for external validation, we too can learn to sit with the silence in our lives and find peace within it. In that stillness, we discover the wisdom that has always been within us, waiting to be heard. As we journey through life, it's easy to tie our sense of value and worth to how much attention we receive from others. We live in a world where constant communication is the norm, where the ping of a new message is enough to validate our existence. But what happens when that message doesn't come? What happens when silence settles in, and we are left waiting for a call, a text, or a sign from someone we care about? True peace, however, does not lie in the number of messages we receive or the frequency of calls. It doesn't come from the validation of others or the constant reassurance that we are valued. The key to true peace lies within ourselves, within our ability to find calmness and stillness in the silence. It is in these quiet moments that we reconnect with the very essence of who we are. We learn that our value doesn't depend on someone else's recognition or attention. When we stop fearing silence and start embracing it, we open ourselves up to a new kind of peace. We realize that silence is not a punishment, it is a teacher. It's a space where we can reflect, grow, and discover the true depth of our being. Instead of seeing silence as a sign of abandonment, we begin to see it as an opportunity for self-discovery, a chance to look inward and reconnect with our inner stillness. The truth is that silence is not something to be feared. It is the space in which our wisdom grows. It is the moment of clarity between the noise, where we can find true understanding and peace. So the next time you find yourself waiting for a call that never comes, remember, you are not defined by who reaches out to you. You are defined by the peace you cultivate within yourself. Embrace the silence not as an emptiness but as an opportunity for reflection, growth, and self-discovery. As you walk your path, remember that everything flows as it should. Trust the process, trust the journey, and know that the silence you once feared is, in fact, a doorway to inner peace. If you found this video insightful, I invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Light for more deep dives into Buddhist philosophy and the path to inner peace. Join our community as we explore the teachings of the Buddha, learn to embrace silence, and uncover the wisdom that lies within us all. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video, and feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know how you've experienced silence and what lessons it has taught you. Until next time, may you walk in peace, embracing the stillness.